Okay, I think I'm on the air. I don't know. You guys tell me if I'm on the air. Oh, look. Nightmaker, 1979. He's here. Good to see you. Who else is here? I am up on Twitch. I am up on YouTube. I am jumping through hoops to see if I am up on Mixer. Yeah, looks like I am. Check the sound. Okay. I can hear myself. So, how are you folks? Thanks for coming at our new day and time. We had some scheduling stuff we had to work with. Hopefully it's temporary. I know a lot of folks that are across the Atlantic Ocean from us. It's very late for them, and I appreciate any of you who show up because we have pushed it an hour later. I don't expect this this particular schedule to last forever. It's just we gotta work around some stuff. So really appreciate you guys' patience, and glad that so many of you are showing up already. So yeah, Final Fantasy VIII Angel, we're actually changing the schedule. We are going to be on Mondays at 3 o'clock for the next little while. So so if marking your calendars is a thing that you do, this is when you should mark them, is right now. So, yep. Let's see. Yeah, so Nightmaker says it's 10 p.m. Where they are. Let's see, what does it... Where is it 10 p.m. right now? That's 7 hours to the east of me? 3 hours to the east, so it's 4 hours past the East Coast? Is that... Because I thought Europe was further away than that. Are you in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean? Are you in Brazil, Nightmaker? Now you give me a math problem. Oh, Portugal. Okay, yeah. If Nightmaker's in Portugal or Ireland, okay, yeah, that makes sense. It'd be a little further because I feel like, yeah, England is 8 hours to the east of me, and so 7 hours would be just west of England. So yeah, Portugal, that would make sense. Ireland would make sense. Iceland is actually probably a little closer. Oh, Nightmaker says Scotland. Oh, so he's in Scotland, so it's actually about to be 11 p.m. Okay, that makes more sense to me. So John Hawkins is asking if we're working on anything for the wish list. We are, but this is not the stream where we're going to talk about it. Next week, we might have something a little bit more specific to get into. But this week, we're actually doing an interview with Alex Thomas, who's one of our sound designers. He's even brought in kind of a special treat. He's going to show you guys a breakdown of how the Blood Plague Screamer noise was made. So that's going to be pretty fun. So if you guys have any audio design questions, queue them up, get ready, because we want to hear them while Alex is here. Let me get into the live stream channel. So yeah, so there's not going to be a giveaway today. There's not going to be a community spotlight. We're doing that less often now. Basically, the thing that the problem that we're running into is that the stream takes a lot of time to put together when we're doing something very complicated, and we're working on some stuff pretty hard right now. And we need every minute we can get. So we're trying to make the stream simpler and more convenient to make, so that we can make more game. And then once we get over the current hump, and sometime in the future, we're on a different cadence, we might be able to spend more time on the stream. But right now, we've got to try to wedge it into our schedule. It's a challenge, but hopefully you guys appreciate us spending more effort working on the game and less effort working on the stream. As much as we love coming in here and hanging out with you guys. The thing we don't want to do is just stop streaming for a while. That would be lame. We want to come in here and, this is a very useful way for us to communicate with you folks. So, reading some stuff. Yeah. I appreciate the commiseration over the fact we got to work hard. We're not crunching right now. We're just working very intensely and with a lot of focus on some deadlines that we've got. And multiple different deadlines. We're, like we've said many times, we're working on lots of different things at the same time. We've got different little sub-teams that are working on different things that will be released at different times. So I'm working on one of the teams that's actually lasting the longest, but we're trying to get a lot done by some time in the future. And so we're like, still kind of like every minute counts, even this early. And our guest next week, Susan, she's got a sub team that's working on something that's going to come out much sooner, and so they're very close to having to be done, and so they're working pretty hard too. Blitz wants to know what time I usually leave the studio and go home. Well, it kind of varies from day to day. My typical schedule, if I have a typical schedule, is from 8 to 4. So I get in the office at 8 and I leave at 4, with a lot of slop on there. I'm at the mercy of bus schedules, and so sometimes I'll get here late or get here early. When I want to do extra work, usually I try to get in early rather than leaving late, just because getting home and helping take care of my family, my kids, and stuff like that is pretty important. And Undead Labs is a very they really stress making sure that people can spend time with their families, and so that's really cool. But if something's going on or whatever, like we have a meeting that runs long, or there's a job I have to get done before I leave, I'll sometimes stay past 4, stay to till 5 or 6 or 7, But it's very flexible. The kind of work that we do is like some jobs are very tiny and it's easy to just cram a bunch of them into a day. And some jobs it's like you get to the end of your day and you're like, I'm not done with this and I'm going to forget what I'm doing by tomorrow. And so you kind of, unless you've got an emergency pulling you home, you kind of work a little bit longer just to get to a stopping point so that you can quit. A lot of the work we do is very you hold a lot of stuff in your head at once while you're working. And you can't just stop whenever you want to and quit. So it's nice to have kind of a flexible schedule. But it has been really nice lately that there have not been recently a lot of mandated crunches or anything like that. Undead Labs is usually very, very cautious with tools like that and really avoid. And when they have said, okay, we're crunching now, there's always a time limit. It's going to be over at a certain time. They tell us exactly how much they hope it will work over, and they don't just say use an unbounded amount of your own time in order to get this insane thing done in an impossible schedule. They're like, okay, we just need to push 10% harder in order to reach some specific goal, and then we're done, which is much better than a lot of the places that I've worked. So, is Undead Mark in the? There he is. Undead Mark is in the chat. So if you guys have questions that I am missing because I got into long rants and I completely lose track of the chat, he can answer some of your questions probably, or maybe he'll just poke fun at us. That's usually what he does. In the next minute or so, hopefully, Brant and Alex will get in here so that I don't have a heart attack and think I have to start the stream all by myself, because that will be very awkward. Svengar wants to know if I have a long commute. My commute, depending on when I do it, when I'm working super early days, it can be kind of short, 40 minutes or less. It's usually around an hour to an hour and a half, though. But I use that time on the bus to decompress, watch movies, play Switch games, that kind of thing. Do stuff that I normally don't have time to do during work hours or during family time. So it's actually I kind of don't mind my long commute because I'm not driving on it. I'm just riding the bus, and it's not too bad. Leon Managers wants to know why the day switch. So it's for personal scheduling concerns on the team. We just needed to. It was going to be a lot easier for folks, me included, to get all of our stuff done if it was on Monday instead of on Tuesday. So I really appreciate you guys' patience with us, changing it. Specifically, I mentioned earlier, viewers in Europe. I know that this actually pushed this into midnight type territory, which makes it very late, and so I apologize for that. I don't expect this schedule to last forever. We, at some point we'll probably try to scooch it a little bit earlier again, but for right now, during the current, schedule, this is kind of when it fit. So I'm really sorry if anyone has trouble watching the stream at this time, and I hope that that maybe you can keep up on YouTube and talk to us on social media if you miss this chance to interact. And look, it's Brant.
B.
Brant's
aggressive.
coming.
B. E. Aggressive.
So now we're just waiting on our guest, Alex Thomas, sound designer, is going to be coming in here. That's going to be cool.
Why is that loser not in here yet?
Because I tell people, oh, get in here anytime between 2:45 and 3, and a lot of them are like, I got to get there at 2:45, and then I feel like I'm wasting kind of their time because they got to sit here for 15 minutes. And so I told him,
oh, there he is.
I told him 2:55, and he's great. He's right on
time. We were just
Exactly.
singing your praises, Alex.
Yeah.
I keep really good time.
So for those of you on the pre-stream, this is Alex Thomas. He is a sound designer, and you're going to get to know him during this that was great.
I like Alex.
That was beautiful.
Brant is. He's great.
If you guys have any audio design questions, sound design questions, queue them up in your heads so that you can ask them during the stream. Our mods will try to funnel the most relevant questions to us, and you'll get answers from Alex. The last time you were on the stream was something like, was it a couple of years ago?
I think it was maybe a year or so, and Jordan and I would kind of like tag team some just random audio questions.
It was back when we were over on the couch, right? And you guys sat on the arm of the couch.
Yeah, we
there
kind
was
of
two of
leaned
you.
over like this. Yeah,
There wasn't a lot of space.
Now we've got all this space.
I know. Well, it's like a little more cozy, but it's more focused. I feel like.
Yeah,
I get distracted and I'll start looking at the speakers and stuff like that.
Here we moved to a tiny little corner of the room now, and so the only thing to do here is look at the stream.
Wow. A wild, bitter mercy shows up.
Oh wow, good to see you. There's a lot of people. I've been, they keep getting me off on rants where I
Bitter
talk for a long
Mercy's
time.
one of the playable characters in our game.
She also made Puppet Brant and Puppet Jeffrey.
That's right.
Who
yeah.
will not be making an appearance today. But
No.
we got regular Brant and regular Jeffrey already. So
But hello to everyone who's saying hi. I can't read all of you, but appreciate you guys showing up.
Oh man, that's a pretty tough confession to do on the air, that you never learned to read.
I didn't. I have an English degree too.
It's only an optional requirement. I mean, English is only, it's a spoken language primarily, so, that's fine. So we've got about 2 minutes before we're going to get started. We've got, some questions for Alex and any of you guys' questions we want to hear. We've also got you guys are going to get a little bit of extra insight into the sound work that went into the Blood Plague Screamer. So look forward to that. Stick around till that. That'll be kind of later in the stream probably. But
that was it, right?
That was it. Brant, they just recorded
Slightly
Brant.
less disturbing.
Hi, Abra. Abra, did you get your care package, by the way? Just want to make sure.
They're asking if Brant is in a cupboard right now. For those of you who were here when Alex first arrived, you can see that Alex and Brant are actually sitting right next to each other.
Oh, I get to look that way.
But they don't make a Logitech camera that will capture all three of us at this range. And so we used to actually put two cameras right next to each other and try to line them up so it was
So
a
when
big, massive panorama.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and that looked really weird, so we don't do that anymore. 1 more minute. So be thinking of your audio questions, everybody. And I feel like I've just forgotten how to do this now. Other people have been hosting for so many
really?
weeks.
Oh.
Yeah, so I think last week I did it, but the previous 2 or 3 weeks had other hosts, and so I'm kind of on my back foot here.
Well, you're natural, so.
Oh, we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Counting down. All right.
Am I doing anything special?
You are you can decide if you want to be playing. This is our standard mode game. If you want to switch to nightmare mode, feel free.
Standard mode.
You can also play standard mode, and that's totally cool. I think I got the audio. Last time I screwed up the audio levels on this game, and it was just blasting everyone. It was way too loud.
Are we talking about the Blood Screamer?
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
you might want to
Blood
play
Screamer
Heartland.
Should I switch over to Heartland?
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah.
Do we have a Heartland?
I mean, we have.
I don't know if we have a
lots of sounds
save.
to talk about and everything, but.
Yeah, go ahead and switch to Heartland. That sounds good. And looks like it's 3 o'clock, so we should get started with the proper stream, everybody. Let me make sure real quick that I have not left this. Okay, good.
Oh, continue, yes.
Awesome. Okay, are you guys ready?
Mm-hmm.
Here it comes. Hello, survivors. Welcome to the State of Decay 2 stream. I'm your host, Jeffrey Card, and sitting right next to me is our guest, Alex Thomas.
Hello, everyone.
Alex Thomas is a sound designer. What's a sound designer?
We basically anything in the game that can or should make sound, or maybe shouldn't make sound, we'll do something for it. So.
Yeah, games are kind of like animation and really different from like when I'm, for instance, when I was a young hopeful film student and I wanted to make movies in my backyard, I would just get out a camcorder and film it, and we'd get a lot of sound, crappy sound, but we get a lot of sound just from the environment, and sound just happens naturally. But in a video game or in an animated movie, every single sound is fake, and so even the slightest, subtlest things, this guy has to think about and figure out and create.
And, even in movies, most of what you are hearing is actually done in the post-process anyway,
That's true, yeah.
And, maybe even, up to, 30 to 50% of the dialogue is even done, in a studio where they're, trying to match their lips to their own lips from on camera. So.
And sometimes you can tell and sometimes you can't. It's better when you can't.
I know.
But we should also mention that over here we got Brant Fitzgerald, our resident...
Oh, hi.
Our resident taco aficionado, who is going to be playing the game with us. So let's.
I didn't know that was your title.
So I just realized that this was the end of that stream where where we totally ripped off Fall Down Go Boom's format, where people were giving me rules.
Oh, that's right.
And so my character does not have a backpack on at this moment. So we're gonna have to fix that. I got to see how much. I've got a little bit of gas. I think I can get home with that.
So we're going to be playing in Heartland today because at some point, a little bit later in the stream, Alex is going to give us a breakdown of how the Blood Plague Screamer noise, one of the more complicated noises in the game, came together. Maybe I'm making that assertion. I don't know if that's true.
One of the more complicated ones?
Is it one of the more complicated ones, or am I just making that up?
What can I do for you? Maybe it has the illusion based on everything that goes into it being complicated, but it's kind of all relative based on one of the sounds that was really hard for me to make was the sound of putting on the bandages. It was such a simple sound, and I don't even know if I got it right in its current iteration, but...
Because really, in real life, putting on a bandage makes almost no sound, right? So you've got to make a distinctive sound players will hear that sounds like it's accurate to putting bandages on, even though it's not.
It's like something you would expect to hear, but isn't actually real. So there's no, so recording it, you can't just, I even tried to, take a bandage and do that. I was like, well, that doesn't work, and then you just tried it. I was like... So that, for me, was way more complicated than the Blood Plague Screamer sound, even though the layers and the processing that goes into it, I probably spent more time on the Screamer, but it has a natural cadence to flow into it because you know what you want to add because it's made up. So you kind of, once you kind of get an idea in your head, you can kind of start to roll with it and kind of think of it almost like reduction sculpting. You start with a big block, you throw every sound you can right at the wall. And then you start saying, okay, let's cut this part out and this, and cut this away, delete that track, and then it kind of starts to form into a sculpture in a way.
Oh, that's interesting. I never thought of starting big and going small.
Yeah, it works well for me because I start to I have a bunch of ideas that all kind of may or may not work, and just throwing them into a session, listening to them with the processing is really it's the best way for me to be able to decide whether it's working or not.
So it sounds like maybe the easier sounds are the ones that are either absolutely just obviously realistic, and that's the right sound, like a car horn or something like that, or completely fantastical sounds where you just get to make up whatever you want, and it's the weird in-between space where it's not realistic, but you still have to communicate something subtle to the player.
Exactly, yeah.
It's because we don't have, we don't put on, the suits they have in Ready Player One where we can feel everything that's happening in a game. There's some things where it's there's a thing that happens in real life where I would feel it, and I would be able to, use my other senses to tell that it's there.
Yeah.
But in a game, we don't have that, and we end up having to use sound to sort of be a shorthand to communicate stuff to the player that they can't see.
Right.
Anything they can't see, audio is our only other tool.
Which is why I think that UI sound design is particularly hard, especially if you don't really have a noticeable real world analog, the notepad, right? And in the first game, right? It's something you can be okay, well, you open it up, you hear a page flip, right? But all of the UI is kind of non
abstract.
Yeah, abstract. Right? Yeah, and so Jordan, our senior sound designer, did a fantastic job with basically making all of those sounds just kind of abstract but still informative, and that stuff seems very difficult for me, but I didn't do any of that. So
cool. Well, let me check in. Look, we've already got some questions coming in. So what would it take to create the sound of a Screamer/Juggernaut hybrid Scream? So if we made a Juggernaut that had the powers of a Screamer, how would you approach that creatively?
I guess I might look at the original source. So Kevin, our audio director, was the original source for the Juggernaut. He was
It's his voice?
It's his
He
voice.
was,
Yeah,
he
And
was,
also- and
he was
also
the
his-
original voice for
yeah, for
all the zombies.
all the zombies. Everyone. So he was the original
Except
voice
the
for all
female.
zombies.
I would say, yeah. And also his personality.
Yes. He's a monster. Kevin
So-
is a monster.
So I might start. I might start with getting his voice in there and start looking at like what that would actually do, right? So maybe this juggernaut, like he raises his head up and starts yelling, right? So I might get Kevin to do like a really big yell, and then take that into a session, and then I would probably pitch it down, maybe do a reverse in some parts, add some processing, like some dynamic range limiting, distortion maybe, and then
There's something about reversing a sound that just makes it feel, I mean, hyper unnatural. It's
Yeah.
like, it's not just fake, it's like, no, this is supposed to be real, except it's not. And you get really creeped out.
because you still hear like the harmonic content of the real person's voice, and so when you hear that, and your brain kind of almost subliminally gets like tricked into thinking, oh, that's a real voice that I hear, and it's really more organic,
Yeah. So that question, by the way, was from someone who goes by no one in particular, and at first I wasn't quite sure whether that was their name or not, but that's where that came from.
Wonder had just been wondering it for a long time. So
So Blitz wants to know, how was the sound made when characters are searching for loot? It sounds real.
well, I didn't exactly make that, but I have been entrenched in that process for a while.
I don't know if I buy
It
that.
really is just Jordan making a giant prop of all the things that you might find in that thing. So he'll take a toolbox, right, and like that is already full of tools, but he might think, okay, here's a couple of these things, and he'll just have a couple of microphones up and just record him kind of searching a little bit, and then he'll start to go faster and move it all around faster, and then we have, for every container has a specific sound set that goes from slow to fast, and so it really was just recorded like you see your character doing it.
I do remember Kevin getting in trouble with his wife because he trashed his kitchen when he was
like in the fridge, yeah.
going, like he was recording himself going through the cupboards and stuff.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
funny.
So this might be more of like maybe a code bug type question, but Sleepy Bill wants to know, why is it sometimes in Drucker County when I slam through doors it doesn't make the noise? I don't know if that's in your department or if that might actually be a code problem where we're not firing off the sound you guys made.
There was something recently where that particular house in that building was actually, the door wasn't actually set up as anything. It wasn't actually, for audio, being recognized as a door.
Get rid of it.
And so that should be fixed. I haven't noticed anything different, but maybe I'll go take a look extra. So, but basically everything has to be associated with an audio switch. Basically, it says what is the thing and what is it doing. And sometimes we have thousands of things. One might get missed because somebody replaces the door or changes the way it is based on some other feedback. And so
Yeah, and they changed the art of it, and they forgot they also have to change the
Yeah,
audio,
yeah.
and they never got around to it. By the way, if you do find bugs in our game, support.stateofdecay.com
Oh,
is
there
where
you
you
go.
go to deal with
Ooh.
that. So basically, it's a site where Joe Swarner, who is currently one of our mods actually in the chat, he manages this thing day to day, and he reads every message that comes in, and he's an expert on our game. And so if you're having trouble with something where you need help, you can go to support.stateofdecay.com, get some help. If you have a technical issue, something that we actually need to fix on our end, he can put it officially into our queues so that we can get it get it solved. And lately, we've been really focusing a lot on trying to prioritize and take all the feedback that he's getting from the audience and make sure we're doing the right stuff in the right order.
Right.
So,
Love to get audio feedback too of things that might be broken, because if it's broken and and then we see it, we'll fix it that day. So it's usually pretty easy fixes. It's just
yeah, that's my favorite. Like, there's certain parts of my job where the bugs that come in are very complicated and confusing, but there's other parts where every single fix is super easy,
Yeah.
and I just want to get a million bugs on the other
yeah,
side.
you're like yes, check, complete. That's that feels so
it
good.
feels so good to close bugs. There's kind of no greater feeling in the game industry than cleaning out your bug queue. So Matt Sisko wants to know, so do you do sound digitally, or do you whack leather jackets next to a microphone?
It's really a combination of both. So I would say most, maybe 99% of the sounds that we have are real live sounds that are recorded into a microphone. Now, those are also converted into a digital signal to which we can then process and stuff like that. But it all has like a real world analog, and it's voltage signal going into the microphone that's getting transformed into these sort of like waveforms that we can play with. There are a few sounds that are completely synthesized, like all of the Clio stuff in the Daybreak and then the Heartland stuff is all analog synthesizer stuff, and then I've run that
Oh,
through
really?
like a sampler plugin, and you can kind of play it on a keyboard, and then kind of like rip through the samples really fast, and it creates this sort of like jittery, clicky sound, or maybe you can slow it down, and it creates this, stretches the analog sound out. You know, it still eventually becomes digital, but that is like, it's not actual recording, it's just a synthesized sound that we've just completely mangled to sound like what we think a sort of a giant drill would sound like, or whatever.
So yeah, some of the weirdest sounds you can make are like, they're not quite like digital where you just like you typed in a bunch of numbers and made something
Right.
happen, and they're not natural. There's like this weird middle ground, like early synthesizer zone where like things like a theremin, where it's like
Yeah.
you're doing some analog real world thing, but it's being translated into a
Right,
signal.
and really all it is an oscillator that's creating a sine wave or a wave signal that kind of just sounds like a beep or something like that. And then you have all these other sorts of processes that then change that, you know, based on like how intense the sound is played, or you know how long does it last after you let up off of the sound, or you know which kinds of frequencies are accentuated and stuff like that.
So Hanson Steele wants to know, what are the sounds of helmets hitting the ground, really? Did you get some helmets?
I
or
do believe that it is a real helmet hitting the ground. Yes.
with a head in it, or
no, just it's
tossing the helmet?
yeah, it's just an empty helmet. Yeah.
Wow.
I think it's Jordan's bike helmet.
What a lack of
I
commitment.
know. Oh, wait, what about it? It's actually a melon that's been partially hollowed out with a plastic casing that we cast ourselves by melting it. We're using lighters.
I mean,
the
I would-
BS
I-
is really thick in
I
here.
would not put it past a sound team to do something like that just because it sounds fun. So we got a similar question from Nightmaker 1979. How did you get the car blowing up sound effect? Did you blow up a car?
This is the instance in which, you know, for most times we like to actually record the stuff ourselves, but things like explosions are very expensive and dangerous and time-consuming, and there are a lot of really fantastic recordists out there that specialize just in these things, and they'll go blow up cars.
I'm
Yeah.
really glad that you guys did not risk like blowing your hands
Yeah.
off,
I
deafening
begged-
yourselves.
Yeah.
I begged Kevin to,
I mean, it
to
would
let
be
me
really
do that.
fun, but you know, sometimes it is just better to just get like, you know, they have these huge multi-microphone setups of some explosions, and then we'll take those raw sounds and we'll layer them in and choose which ones we want, and then process them in a different way and add some metal breaking sounds on top of that and some debris falling. So it still is a process of creating the sound, but the explosion itself was most likely just like a library sound that we layered and pitched and processed and stuff like that.
It does remind me of this one time I was working on a team that was half in India, and I went to India to work with the team over there, and it was in the middle of Diwali, which is a big fireworks focused festival over there, and we had one of the animators in the team kept lighting fireworks in his hand and throwing them. I'm like, if you lose that hand, our game is not coming out. So thank you for not deafening
Yeah,
yourselves
no, of course.
with explosions. Okay, so Fred Garvin wants to know how the feral roar came about. So we're going to be looking at the screamer scream pretty soon. So I'm not going to take questions about that because you're going to get the answer no matter what. But the feral roar, what's special about
Feral
that?
roar, again, that's also Kevin's voice. It's that kind of a legacy sound that we've pulled through since State of Decay 1. So because
Because it has that distinctive sound that
yeah.
says there's a feral nearby.
Yeah, so
get
people
scared.
that go on from State of Decay 1 into State of Decay 2, they want to be able to recognize that. It's just an easy way to get just like the perfect player feedback for people that know. And if people don't know, then they're going to learn very
Yes,
fast.
exactly.
Especially in Nightmare mode. So that roar is Kevin's voice, kind of, I think it's layered and processed, but it's also got some like tiger stuff in there. And, you know, once you kind of like add some, you know, time processing and some reverb and stuff, it kind of has more of like a roar. It doesn't sound very human at all. But again, back to that whole like harmonic sort of characteristics of a human voice. All of our zombies are inherently human at one point. So we still wanted to keep that as a design aspect.
Kind of the same way that the look of a zombie, the fact that it looks human but dead is part of what
Yeah.
makes it disturbing. The fact that it also sounds human but wrong. It kind of lends it that same kind of disturbing edge that you get. So Svengar says the audio in State of Decay 2 is fantastic.
Oh, well,
So
thank you.
Enjoy that for a second. And then they say I love
agree, by the way.
so do I. Yeah, I feel like this game pulls way more than its weight on the audio side. We're still playing catch up basically with you guys' team with the whole rest of the game. They say, I love the ambient sounds like crows in the near distance, etc., even if you never see them. Which actually reminds me of one of the questions that was submitted to us when your Dev of the Month article came out. It was similar. They said, this is somebody who had apparently, I don't know if they cracked into the game to look at the files or whatever, but they were like, why are there over 100 ambient sounds of birds? Don't ask me how I know that. So do you want to talk a little bit about the bird sounds?
Yeah, I would love to. So that's what was originally what my job was brought on to do, was sort of implement these sounds into these maps, right? So not only do you have these maps that are beautiful and have this, unique like characteristics to them, but every sound needs to be able to be put in there and played in a specific way. And so I kind of like to think of there's sort of the 3 layers of sounds. There's like what we call the backgrounds, which are our sort of a surround sound looping event, and those are kind of the widest amount of space between you and the subjects, being the wind or the birds or something like that. One layer down are what we call like a one-shot event. It kind of just is a random generating sound around the player, like a procedural sort of ambient sound. That's where those crows come in, and they're specifically designed to sound like you could see them if you really looked, but not actually something that would be, you wouldn't notice it flying across right in front of you. It's not that close. And so getting the balance of where those sit within the frequency range and the amount of reverb in it is really tricky, because you want to be able to, they should blend into the backgrounds.
I remember there was this one case, and I don't know if this is actually still in the game, but I remember playing one time before release, and I walked by a trailer, and I heard something rattling around inside the trailer, like trying to get out, and it was freaking me out, because it really sounded like there was a zombie that was about to jump out and get me. And I don't know if that actually stayed, if you can actually find trailers.
There are a few of them around, so a few trailers around there. The ones that aren't searchable will have a zombie kind of inside of them. There's also one stuck in a well in Meager Valley. There's a little well. There's one stuck in there. In the hospital,
I haven't found that one yet.
The hospital in Drucker County. There's the blocked off stairs. There's maybe a 60% chance that one can play up there.
Wow. So when you're just walking around, sometimes you'll think you hear something, and it really is just like a trap that's been laid by the audio team.
Yeah, and it's like, everything is kind of on a play chance too. So every time you walk by that trailer, you might not get it. You might only get it 10% of the time. Just like there is a small chance that next to every garbage can, that you'll hear a little scurrying sound. And it's really only maybe like a 10% chance at nighttime you might hear it. And if you're walking by, you might never hear it in your whole playthrough, but if you sit there and listen, you'll hear a little scurry. And that's just like, it's kind of like a little, almost like a little audio game for us. It's like a fun little extra thing that if somebody really wants to sit there and listen, they can find these interesting things. And we've placed those kinds of emitters, even just regular birds and everything, back to why are there 100 bird sounds everywhere, right? I mean, every tree has a chance to play a bird from it, And so...
And do you have, is the sheer number mostly about just avoiding the player starting to recognize the sounds?
Yeah,
and think, every time I go over here, I hear the same bird fly by.
Yeah, right. So, the zombie stuck in the trailer, like, there's always going to be the zombie. Sometimes you walk by, he might not be awake, he might not be there. One playthrough, he might be there. One playthrough, he might not be. And those sounds were pretty cool. Jordan did all those sounds as well. He just, recorded himself kind of making these, kind of growly sounds and some scratching sounds. And then we used what we call a convolution reverb, to basically take the sound of inside a metal container and then just apply that to the sound of itself, so it always sounds like it's indoor. Like if you took that and put it outside the trailer, it would still sound like it's indoors.
That is really interesting that you've got, so do you have a library of different kind of treatments you can do to sound? So take a normal sound and say, oh, now it sounds like it's in a metal container, or this sounds like it's coming over the radio, or this taking the same sound and putting it through filters.
We have a bunch of
like the blood plague zombies, for instance.
Yeah, right. So we have a bunch of processes we can do, and one of them being in that instance, the convolution reverb. And if you want to put something in a space, basically what we can do is we can play an impulse within that space and record it. So a starter pistol or a sine wave sweep, or even popping a balloon or a hand clap.
So you go in with a source of noise, a microphone, and you get in the space.
Yeah, and then record that, take that into the processing, and then it basically creates a reverb algorithm out of that sound. And then we'll basically make it sound like it's in that space.
I didn't know we had software that could reverse engineer a reverb from a sample.
We have that. We have that in runtime in our game. Most of our reverbs are that in the game right now at runtime. So
I didn't know how fancy this was when we started this conversation. That's awesome. So that was a question from Jack the Ripper Ma, and he's got another one. which is how did you produce the sounds for the plague hearts, especially when they're pulsating?
Right. So again, senior sound designer and genius Jordan did those sounds, and I was there when he kind of was crafting them and putting them in. We all had our feedback on what was there, but essentially, I believe that it is sounds of like water, just like being like big bubbles of water and stuff like that, and then just processed and pitched down, and you can change the amount of formants that go on them and stuff like that, so it sounds more like it's
What's a formant?
basically it's like the way that your mouth makes sounds. So like
gotcha.
it goes like oh, that's like creating formants with your mouth, you know.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
And so you can kind of apply those to it to make it sound more like it's actually coming from a vocal cord. You know?
Wow.
And so that
So you can take a normal sound and make it sound like it's kind of
yeah,
a little bit human.
Yeah, and
That's interesting.
Yeah, and various other things. I'm sure he did a lot. I don't know exactly all he did, but I think the essential bass sound is just some water.
Wow. So our old friend Bitter Mercy wants to know what's the most difficult sound that you personally had to create for the game?
I'm gonna go back to the bandage sound.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just so difficult. I have no idea why. It was like maybe a mental block on myself. You know, like I could, you can make all sorts of crazy creature sounds, but that one, it was like. Eventually, I ended up just taking like a real ace bandage and I stretched it out really tight and just kind of went.
Oh, interesting.
And that just sounded the most believable to me for what you were actually seeing on screen. And
I mean, the sound we've got works for me.
Yeah, it works.
Like it tells me bandages are happening,
Yeah,
and
right.
so that's even though like I've never actually heard the exact sound being made while I was like dressing a wound.
Yeah.
It's still like it communicates bandage, and I can sort of feel an ace bandage on my arm or something like that while I'm hearing that sound,
Yeah.
which is kind of weird.
the other one I think would be the Screamer does have like a vertical attack where he launches that goop, blood plague goop out of their mouth, and that one took a lot of like patience and iteration on just like sitting with it. I would try something, get it into the game, because you can never tell if something's going to work until it's in the game and working. And so you get it working, and then only then do you know that's not right. And I went through a lot of different iterations with that to get the right thing. And I think what I learned was that I was trying to go too subtle with it. It was trying to make it too delicate, and it just wasn't really quite reading. And so I just like did something crazy and over the top, and just like really crunched it with a lot of distortion and a lot of like compression. And it kind of ended up coming out the way I imagined it in my head, and that just is something I stumbled upon after just doing it again and again.
Yeah, there's like an explicit technique that game designers use too, where there's like it intentionally overcorrecting
Right.
just to find where the outer bounds are.
Uh-huh.
Like don't just like raise something by 10%, double it,
Yeah.
and then see if you overshot, and then
Yeah.
pull back a little bit.
Yeah.
So Ryan Price says, I love the small things in this game, like when you fire a gun and you can hear the bullet shells landing on different surfaces. That's a real thing that goes on in our game.
Yep,
It's like
yeah.
that shell pops out. It's a real object. It knows where it lands, and it makes a different sound.
Yeah, and we have various playlists that kind of make it do that cadence of like ting, 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 ting. And so we'll have like, each individual sound, like a playlist that we'll play. Okay, let's play this one 3 times. Every once in a while it can play it 4 times or 2 times. And yeah, and any surface that it finds on the ground, whether it's, a piece of hollow plastic or some metal or the concrete or dirt, it'll know exactly what it's hitting and will play the correct sound. And it's just one of those things that's just, we already have all these surfaces set up for every sort of physical detection, like bullet impacts and footsteps and body falls and any sort of physics object, and that just is the same system that the bullets use, and some of those things just kind of like all work in tandem together. And
Yeah, it's one of these things where it's like so much of like your experience of life is going around and sort of intuitively knowing what's going on around you because of the things you hear. And you don't really think about it. Like it becomes so, by the time you're an adult, certainly, and even by the time you're a kid, by the time you're not a baby anymore, it's so intuitive. It's weird to have to think about like how much you have to think about like a shell casing. What does it land on?
Right.
And what does it mean for all these different surfaces? Whereas, but if it like when it's done right, we don't notice it because it just feels natural. But when it's done wrong, when like you're running a character around in a video game and you're hearing clop, 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 clop on grass, you're like really disconcerted.
Yeah.
And the fact you don't feel like that in State of Decay is because you guys had to think of every single case like that and try to solve them all.
It's all about like active versus passive listening. Like sometimes when I'm playing a game for fun, I'm really doing passive listening, right? I'm not really like trying to dissect anything. Things that pull my ear while I'm doing passive listening are the things that I think I should change, and but on the other hand, if I'm doing active listening, I'm listening to a long ambience recording that I've done. I'm listening to every single sound that makes, and like maybe there might be a little foot scuff of mine from when I'm recording, and like I'll have to pull that out. Whereas if I was passively listening to it, I would never notice it. It's part of just the environment around you. And so
I listened to a podcast recently where there was they were talking about one of the early people who studied like the modern study of acoustics in rooms. He was asked to just like solve a problem with the acoustics at like an auditorium at his college, but then he got so into it that he redid a year's worth of work because he realized that if he wore different outfits, that would change like the bouncing of the sound in the room. So he like picked an outfit and he wore the same outfit for every single thing because the subtlest thing can make a huge difference.
Yeah, any sort of reflection or moving your head closer to one surface or another can change like the output of what you're actually listening to. And
yeah. So let's see here. So Maria Trudeau says, "Thanks for making the Ferals and the Juggernaut sound so scary." Which is that does.
I'll pass your thanks on to Kevin, who I think he worked years and years to get those to sound the way that I think that you like.
Awesome Twitch dude wants to know if you guys actually went shooting to get gun sounds, or if those all from libraries.
Most of those are from libraries. We most of the kind of the newer ones that we've been sort of sustaining the game with are sort of a collection of libraries that we kind of curate. So we buy a bunch of things and we kind of say, I like this aspect of this, but I don't like this. Let's take the tail of this and then the impulse, which is kind of like a lower thumpy version of this, and then process those all together into what we like. And I think we've got some really good results just mixing and matching. We always try to get the right gun for the right model, and sometimes it's not 100% accurate, but most of the characteristics do sound like they are the right caliber and the right gun. Most of the guns in the game were recorded by somebody that we actually know, and he went out with the real guns of every model in a place in Eastern Washington and just systematically recorded every single one and delivered an asset package to us that we were able to then implement into the game and mix and match and decide which ones we liked and process and stuff like that. So yeah, it's a lot that goes into it, but we had a really talented person that actually helped us with that.
So jargon question, impulse.
Right.
What does that mean?
Impulse would be the kind of the quick transient, like as in the pop of the gun, right? And then
the tail is the kind of the die down and the reverb at the end after that.
It's what you hear in the space. So right, if you're close to a bunch of buildings, it'll be kind of a shorter, slappier one. Whereas if you're out in the field, it'll be a long, kind of like take a long time to die out. Interior as well as like a little short, sort of like snappy one.
Yeah, I was actually surprised when I learned that our game is actually in real time, keeping track of how close you are to buildings and things like that, so that it knows what kind of tail to put on your gunshots. So pay attention to that, guys. Like shoot a gun in the field, and then go shoot a gun inside a house, and then shoot a gun between some houses, and it's going to sound different. Let's see here. So Sleepy Bill wants to know, what are the hardest combat sounds to make? Are there some that stand out as being more difficult than others?
I kind of thought the knife sounds were hard to make. Things like baseball bats, like you really know, like that solid wood hit and that thud on the head, like that is a really classic sound that you can kind of emulate, and you can make it sound satisfying really easily. But the sound of a screwdriver, right? You don't want it to sound as big and as intense as getting stabbed with a machete or getting sliced up or your head hacked off, right? So we really need to play with how weak do some things need to sound in order for other things to sound big, because if everything sounds big, then nothing sounds big.
Yeah, that's true.
So I feel like subtle sounds like that were really hard, especially with the combat stuff. And I can senior sound designer Jordan, like he's a real whiz. Like he dialed that in, and like together we kind of all worked on it together. But he was the real main owner of that, and I think he did a fantastic job.
So Ward Style has a question. Basically, it's kind of about how like zombie screams, like a screamer scream, you can hear it from a certain distance, right? And you get the sense of how big it is and how many zombies it's going to attract. And other zombies have a smaller scream that feels like it doesn't carry as far. As far as like, how does sound carrying in a game work?
Well, we have various attenuations that we get to set on each sound. So we have like a distance, say like 30 meters, you can hear this one, or you can only hear this one if you're really, really close to it. And so we can define that. Like we want you to be able to hear the screamer from a really long ways away, or a gun, right? Yeah. So that's kind of like a realistic approach, right? You don't want to hear a zombie like, that's kind of, shambling around. That's like really far away. It's actually not important information for you at the time. And it makes you think that it must be much closer. Yeah, right. Yeah. We actually had a bug early on. It might have even been before you joined the team. It was in fact, it might have even been in the old engine a long time ago, where we had
we had a character. We had just barely implemented characters doing ambient things at the base.
Oh
And
yeah.
you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
The one of the things that the character do would vomit in a toilet.
Right,
But there
yeah.
was a problem with the sound where it sounded like it was right next to you,
Yeah.
no matter where you were. So it's like there was this vomiting person chasing
Yeah.
me around whenever I was wandering around my
so
base.
that's an attenuation problem. So and it's funny, I did that too. So
Okay. That was you. Okay.
yeah.
Cool.
So I had like implemented those sounds and got those sounds in the game and used sort of a default attenuation for it that was basically like any sort of yell, right? So like a vomit is kind of like a louder sound that you might actually hear from far away. It's just like, so it was the same attenuation level as our yell, but you're in the base, and I think also like at that time people could get sick really easy.
Yeah,
And
it
so-
was one of the only activities I could actually do.
Yeah, so everybody was sick and then vomiting, and it
let's
was like
get in the car and go.
the sound of like the I don't really remember what the sound is, but of the dumping the the vomit in. I think it was like maybe like a can of like soup or something getting dumped into the toilet or something. I don't know, like
Well, I people who've been following the stream for a long time have noticed probably that I have a louder voice than most people. In fact, we've got these two shotgun mics here that are pointed directly at you and Brant's face and away from me, so that our voices are about the same level. But so the problem is, if I actually get sick, I puke really, really loud.
Really?
I'm an extremely loud puker. And there was one time where I suddenly got like food poisoning or something, suddenly got sick at work. I had to go over to that bathroom, and I think Brant heard me from across the building.
No, I was in the bathroom.
No, you cleared out to make
I
room
cleared
for
out
me.
because you walked in and said, I'm going to be sick. And I'm like, I'm out.
Because it was full at the time. Yeah, but like basically everyone in the entire office could hear me throwing up. I was involuntarily using my voice. It was the worst thing ever. Thank you. I'm so glad that you guys wanted me to share that with you.
I'm gonna send you home with a recorder that you can keep, and if you get sick, I just want you to mount it right on the toilet seat, and just so we can get some really authentic,
Some really
vomiting,
unique, yeah. Totally. Really, I don't know if it didn't sound like authentic human vomiting. It sounded like somebody pretending to vomit in a really fake and obnoxious way.
It was really bad.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So, Mov3ko wants to know, what was your favorite sound to record for the game? Is that different from the other things we've...
To record?
To record, yeah, to record.
I really enjoy recording nature sounds. I find it so relaxing to go out into nature and just throw up some microphones and then see what you get, and just like doing that active listening and listening to the environment around you. So I did a few things for our environment stuff of recording that I just really enjoyed, like some frogs that we have in Daybreak and in Heartland itself, like some environment sounds that I recorded. And I was out in the middle of a swamp at 1 a.m. recording these frogs, and I was like, there was a bridge that was over this swampy area, and I just put the microphones, some surround sound microphones that I had, and just laid down and just listened to these frogs croak for like probably an hour and a half.
So when you're doing that, you put on headphones to listen to only what the mic can hear?
Yeah, and it's, there's kind of two ways that I do go about it. Sometimes I won't. I want to hear exactly what I'm doing. It's a lot easier to hear in the natural space what you're doing. But the microphones are what you're recording, so it's easier to record the source. So headphones is more close to what you're going to be hearing on your speakers when you get everything into your computer and everything like that.
So here's a question for me. Do you always have a recording setup in your car just in case you encounter a crazy sound, or do you only go out intentionally to record?
I do both. So I have a portable handheld recorder that I always carry with me, and so if there's something that catches my ear, I will record it. Or even if on my phone, if I don't have anything, I can. It's maybe not that great of a recording quality, but it's better to have it than to not have it.
If it's a unique thing, then you're
Right.
like, well, let's catch it and see what we can do with it.
But I do have a special set of microphones that anytime I go to a new place, like if I'm camping, I will pack them with me, and like record overnight or something like that. Or
It's like everything just kind of feels like an opportunity to just
Yeah.
like keep expanding your library of available sounds.
yeah, like we went camping over on the east side, and on the way back, I wanted to stop at the Wild Horse Wind Farm. Right, they have the big wind turbines up
I
above
love this.
Ellensburg. And so I had my microphones with me. I was like, I want to record that because I saw in the game some wind turbines that came up, and so I just went to the wind turbine, recorded it, and then that is just the sound that's in the game. It's just that simple, by recording it, getting a good quality recording, and putting it in and timing it out relatively right to the right sort of animation.
That makes me want to go back to Meeker Valley right now and just like hang out with the wind farm
Yeah.
and like, listen to what it. to
Yeah,
what
I
you
mean, it's
recorded.
funny. It almost sounds like a not real sound. It's like a whoosh, like it kind of almost sounds hyper real. Like it doesn't sound like that's what it should sound like, but that's exactly what they sound like. And I love that sound.
Let's see here.
A lot of questions.
Oh yeah, so this is actually a question that I was going to ask, whether somebody asked it or not. Fred Garvin wants to know, what's the most unrelated object you've ever used to make a Foley sound for the game?
Man, that's a hard one. Like, maybe some like rat squeaking sounds is just taking 2 little styrofoam peanuts and just like
Squeaking them together.
you know, and like putting a little reverb and pitching it up, making little pitch envelopes with it. That's
So you guys didn't just buy a rat for the office?
no,
and you could
I
record
don't
it?
squeeze rats. Jake. The rats.
Yeah, I remember when I was a kid, like there was this big tub of guinea pigs at the local pet store, and if you like put your hand in there and
yeah.
together, they would just make this unnatural noise together, like in unison,
Yeah.
which was just really
Yeah,
it
I
was
used to work
really
at a
crazy.
pet store, and that was you pick them up and they squeal like crazy.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Other than that, I mean, various things for in the Heartland for like the Plague Ball was all this like plunger recordings that Jordan and I did, where we had this like goopy sort of stuff that was supposed to be like this. It was supposed to be this stuff that came out of a packet of things that you ship frozen things with. So it's meant to be frozen and stay cold for a long time, but when you let it thaw, it's this weird goopy thing. And so we just took a plunger and just went and make these weird flubby things. And so everything that's plague related in Heartland is made out of all that. It's all generally the same stuff, and it's kind of just like, you know, you get some weird vocalizations from it, and you go, oh, that's the one, and then you take that and then you edit it in. It's just you don't really know what you're gonna get until you're halfway through recording, and you're like, this is the right stuff. This is it.
So, so Zach has a question. Could you explain a little bit about how dynamic soundtracks are scripted within a game?
It kind of depends on which way you want to go. So there's sort of a like a horizontal approach and a vertical approach. So the vertical mixing of the game is, you know, you have all your tracks. Maybe it's your drums and your strings and your percussion, and then, you know, and then your and maybe your synthesizers, or all these different layers. And then as the game responds to input, those layers go mix up and mix down. So you might have like a little intense area where, you know, you're kind of sneaking around. You get just maybe the drums and the strings, you know, and then as you get into combat, the louder, bigger drums come in, and then and then the horns start blaring, and that's kind of like, you know, that's a one way to approach it. How we did it in this game was more of a horizontal approach, where we wrote we had songs written by our composer Jesper, and our audio director Kevin wrote a bunch of music, and then we kind of choose which moods are fitting. Like, are you sneaking, and then take input from the game, like how many zombies are near you, do they see you, and then kind of play a different track based on that data input. And it's just like, it's a single song that plays, and then rules like that you can interrupt that sneaking with combat music. And then that combat music kicks on, and then once you beat all the zombies, you get a little like, I defeated them stinger, right? And then we have a timer that says, okay, well, after this, if you don't run into any more zombies within a certain number of seconds, you'll get another sort of the nicer exploration tracks, which are just supposed to be playable. You're walking around, just killing one zombie here or there, searching stuff.
And so these songs, they have to be kind of variable lengths, right? Because like you
Yeah.
might be in combat for a long time, or you might be in combat for 20 seconds and then it's
Yeah,
over.
and some of them loop, and some of them are meant to have like an intro, and then they kind of like play through the
Like
song,
loop
and then
a middle part?
loop back around like over, and they have like a seamless loop transition, so they'll stay right on the same BPM and the same transition. So you might listen to it for a long time, and we have rules set in. So like, well, you know, if you're hearing this thing for 10 loops, maybe we'll just end it because maybe it got stuck on, or maybe you're, you know, fighting forever and you're gonna die. You know, just various different kind of things that we tell the game engine to, you know, give us data and then play this event based on that.
So Stephen Mua wants to know, how long does it take to finish one sound effect? I imagine there's probably a variant. Like do you want to talk about sort of what takes a long time, what takes a short time, and what that time scale is like?
It really depends on the sound, you know, like Foley sounds can be really quick to implement because they're tagged on animations, and we have a very specific way to set them up, and those are really easy to get in the game. But
so Foley's things like something hitting something else.
or like clothing movement, you know, and it's about getting those to have the right sound. Is also subjective, you know, and I think they did a bunch of work with the backpack recording sounds that we then implemented into the game, and those did take a long time to create huge sets of those, but each individual sound probably didn't take that much time. But you do have to account for every backpack size. Every person has different clothing that they may or may not wear, and so that took a long time, even though each individual asset didn't. I was able to create the Blood Plague Screamer sound like relatively fast compared to other simpler sounds. just by the nature of like, you know, I was in that good creative space. I knew what I was looking for, and I kind of knew a good baseline. And it really just does depend. Like,
would you say more of your time is spent sort of like iterating and creatively judging the sound you're making and trying to make the right creative decision, or is more of your time spent doing like technical things like getting the attenuation right and stuff like that?
I'd say it's like maybe 60-40 or 50-50, like 60% creative, 40% technical, you know? Getting the sounds to play right is just, you know, you can have a really awesome sound, and if it doesn't play right, then it's wrong. You know, if it's not playing in the game correctly, or it's, you know, the attenuation isn't right, or it's the wrong pitch, or it's not fitting the environment correctly, or fitting the character or the creature correctly, then it's got to be reworked, you know? And that can, sometimes you might just be at a technical hurdle where you need to make a sound less polished in order to fit sort of which technical like limitation you're hitting up against to make it fit in the right context. And that can be just a judgment call based on how we're feeling. We all play together, and we'll look in our mix room here, and then we'll just all like decide, you know what, that is working or that's not working.
So we're about 2/3 of the way through the stream. This is probably a good time to have a look at the Screamer.
Yeah.
Brent, if you want to pause right now, put your headphones on and participate, feel absolutely free. Or you can keep playing. You can do whatever you want. But we're going to go into Screamer mode. So set us up a little bit. So you've provided, you just created a video of sort of where you work when you're creating sounds like the Blood Plague Screamer. So what are we about to hear?
So you're about to hear basically the edit session that I have of the Blood Plague Screamer, and I'm going to play, in the video, I play the full sound just all the way through, and then I'm going to go through each individual layer, and I kind of called those out in on my little dev blog thing of which they are, and so they start off like, my wife did like some screaming, you know, and she has this kind of like creepy, airy scream. It kind of sounds like a ring wraith in a way, and so she screams a bunch of times, and then I just maybe have like a weird gurgly thing, and you'll hear all the sounds, but I'll play each individual layer with their processing, and then at the end I'll play it all the way through again, so you can kind of hear all the parts together.
Okay, so let's hope I set this up right, and we'll check it out.
All right.
So that's the full sound.
That's the full thing, yeah.
And here comes the breakdown.
Yeah, this is the first layer of my wife screaming.
Your wife is terrifying.
And here's the
That was the unmodulated sound, right?
Those
So
are
every time she's angry at you, that's the sound you hear?
yeah, no, that's it. That was just that's just like a regular kind of like throaty growl kind of thing.
That was almost Jeffrey's vomit.
Cougar hissing.
Cougar like you're
Elk bugle.
elk
An
bugle?
elk, yeah.
What? Okay.
This is another elk, but
You got dual elk action. in
that's
this sound.
reversed.
Oh, of course
Yeah.
it is.
Wood scraping.
Oh, I thought that one was an animal. Okay.
I think that's a pig mixed with water.
I think we call that spam.
Yes, pig mixed with water. Okay, here's the whole thing again after all those.
Wow, that is crazy. So it's like you hear that sound, you're like, it's just the otherworldly sound of this monster attacking.
Yeah.
But when you break it down, like, so I thought one of those sounds was an animal when it was actually wood scraping against something.
So that sound was really fun. Jordan and I found a pallet outside of his house, like a full wooden pallet, and we just were like, this is gonna be days. Oh my God.
Nightmaker says, my cats are literally freaking out. We should have warned you that a predator was near.
That's my cat's whole life. She doesn't come near my office.
We can probably go back to the game over chatting.
Anyway, so the palette, and we just knew we were gonna get just a great collection of sounds. And as we were bashing it apart with a hatchet and hammer, pulling things out, this piece of nail stuck out the bottom, and we had a piece of wood that just kind of like got stabbed into it. and it was underneath the pallet. And it was kind of creating this sort of pivot, and then we were doing it on top of like one of those sort of lacquered wood tables, like at IKEA, kind of like almost like this, and
Audience, we have a crappy table right
yeah.
now.
And I went to go move the pallet, and it kind of does like a little jittery kind of thing. I was like, this is great. And so we just record it going back and forth like,
Wow.
and so we have this, and so I always knew it sounded kind of creaturey to me.
Yeah,
And,
no, it absolutely does.
So when we started doing this, I thought, that's going to give it this like really good jittery organic texture because it's a real wood. Creating that friction just creates such a good organic sound.
So for you as a professional connoisseur of sound effects, I keep getting surprised by what sounds actually are. Are you more attuned to that now? Like when you hear a weird sound in a movie or something, you're like, oh, I think I know what that is.
Sometimes I do like to kind of like suspend the disbelief to kind of get myself transported. But if I'm really analyzing, I will try to think of it. But there's a million different ways to do a million different things, and sometimes I just have no idea as well. And I'll just like start throwing stuff. If I want to try to recreate it, I'll start throwing things at the wall, and I'll start thinking like, well, what does that sound like to me? And I'll think, well, is it like a thunderclap that has been pitched down and processed, and might with some compression, and maybe I'll try that, and that's it. Well, that's not exactly right, but maybe it's close. Let's try something a little bit different. And you kind of try to get a good balance of like frequency response, like really low and mid-range and high end and stuff like that.
So Fall Down Go Boom wants to know, how did you get the bone crunching sound of like a juggernaut gnawing on a survivor?
That is a huge collection of gore sounds that we created, and they are just any sort of thing. Like we have like a huge library of all these different like
we're zombie free.
bone breaks, like from breaking celery maybe, or maybe just like smashing into a melon, like a whole bunch of stuff. And so we created this huge palette that we can kind of drag from for each sort of different freak finisher, like when the feral rips you apart. And so when he bashes you down, we played this event, and if you look at the animation itself, it's like maybe 7 tracks of different events that are kind of playing for each sort of movement. Like when he bites you and tears you is each its own sort of sound and event, and they each have their own random variations, and that's just like a bunch of layered up, probably most likely just vegetable sounds, to be honest. Yeah, I mean,
so we have kind of a vegan approach to our violence in our game.
And I support that.
So you I had a great question and I lost it. I'll think of it later. Let's see here. Oh, what Tex Digital wants to know, what is the strangest sound bug you've had to work out of the game? And do you know what caused it?
The strangest bug?
Yeah, I don't know if they're all strange really. Is it mostly just missing sounds
Yeah,
usually?
mostly missing or not really playing correctly. We have a way of sort of changing the way that the game is mixed by creating these things called states. If you're inside, you get a state that says you are inside, or in what kind of building, like you're in a hollow house, you're in a solid brick building, We also have this thing that's when you're in that downed state and you start fighting your way up and down and stuff like that. So turns off all the environment sounds and really plays up the zombie sounds and tries to create this sort of claustrophobic kind of feeling. And that was broken for like 2 years, and that was just like, and it just like it just kept being like you fix one thing and then it's like playing whack-a-mole. You hit one and then two more pop up.
Speaking of sounds.
Oh, look at this guy. Hi.
Okay, I am.
It's so funny, like at the very beginning of Heartland, I don't get scared of that first feral because it's just the only thing I have to do and I'm ready for it. But even much later in the game, when I'm much better equipped, a new feral jumping out of nowhere still just scares the crap out of me.
I like that gun too. Jordan and I tag teamed to make that gun as well. And,
which gun do you have? I didn't actually see.
That's the Echo Assault.
So I don't think I know that one very well.
That's 416 with a front, a vertical front post, which was new for us.
So I realized the question that I was going to ask before was, you probably have to get to know the animations of our game and like the way that the guns work and everything almost as well as the people who actually build that art. I imagine, right?
Yeah, I mean, for the guns and stuff, we have to make sure that it's sounds powerful but also realistic, and we want it to sound good, and we want it to sound like the real gun themselves, and so we have to kind of like we try to, we have to research it basically and say like, we watch videos and figure out like, okay, what is this actually sounding like in this real environment? And same thing with the animations. Like, it took us several iterations to get, like the Juggernaut ripping the person apart, and we had to add different sounds here, create new events, and we would get it all implemented, and then all go to the mix room and then watch it happen again and again and again, and say, you know what, that one bite needs to be just maybe a half second later, or this needs to be a little crunchier. Let's add this extra event in there, and so yeah, we really do have to be really in tune with the animations.
And it's I remember from like editing video when I was in college, it's like sort of you'd put a sound somewhere and you would think you're putting it in exactly the right spot, and then when you actually listen to it, it feels like it's just off and you're like looking at it and like, this feels like I did it right, but it sounds like I didn't, and you got to sort of just kind of go with your gut sometimes about like where it belongs.
And it's like it takes time for sound to play, and you're really your mind focuses on sound a lot faster than the visuals, so if it's off, you notice it a lot faster, and so you'll know when it's wrong.
Yeah. Like I remember that I think we had some wrong setting on my TV at one point, and everything that was coming out of my TV was just a tiny fraction of a second off with the audio, and I was
It's maddening.
I kept thinking, am I crazy? Is this fine and I'm just weird? And eventually I found the right setting, it set it, and everything was fixed. I was like, okay, I was not insane.
Right.
But yeah, no, but you have to deal with that kind of like subtle distinction all the time.
I mean, you'll notice 5 milliseconds off. But a film is only 24 frames per second, so
right, yeah.
Which I don't know what the the math is to make how many milliseconds that is per frame.
Yeah. Okay, so Big Lou says, "Wow, this stream is really making me appreciate all the sounds in the game even more."
Thank you, Big Lou.
I gotta say, this is one of the most active. Like I can't keep up with all the questions people are asking. The people are very interested in your job, and I think they don't get enough chances to talk.
Yeah,
to
sound does seem to be like kind of that dark art too, right? Like we didn't know that was a weird crate, that wood sound was going to happen. I didn't know that it was going to work with the screamer. I didn't know that people were going to think that was going to sound like an animal, and it just happens, and so it's kind of like this sort of like behind the curtains kind of a thing, which.
Not that I'm biased, but I honestly think State of Decay should win some awards for sound design.
Well, thank you.
Are you a sound? Oh, maybe.
So
I'll buy you lunch later.
Okay.
Joseph Lumen says, I recently started using headphones, and during quiet times at my base, I think I can sometimes hear distant gunshots and people screaming for help. Is this a thing in the game, or am I going crazy?
Nope, this is totally a thing. We kind of had this idea of like, the maps are pretty empty, devoid of life, but there should be stuff going on in the background that you don't necessarily see or know what it is, and we sort of kind of developed these playlists of scenes that happen, and so we had this sort of a palette of like maybe explosions, car crashes, screams, gunfire, zombie roars, and then I can make sort of like a little scene happen in the distance. Like, okay, I want maybe like a car tires screeching, and then a crash, and then maybe an explosion with some zombie roars, and kind of like maybe this car crashed into this thing. Create these little sort of subliminal stories that you hear, and they happen very infrequently. They're pretty quiet, and then they're just supposed to be like a subtle thing. You think, oh, something happened over there. I don't know what it is. I can't really go check it out. But
I don't have any expectation.
Yeah, maybe one of those crashed up cars that you find on the side of the road is maybe it's some stuff happened there.
Big Lou has a question that might not actually end up being for your team, which is, how challenging was it to have survivors say things at the right time, seeing as there's so many lines in the game?
Yeah, that was, a big system that was developed through our design team.
Yeah.
They really did do, they decided, what conditions have to say for which thing, which things happen,
and I've been playing through a lot of missions and stuff, like, right now, we're working on the secret stuff that I'm working on, and all I can notice is how much work there is still left to do on this.
Yeah.
Because one problem we have is whenever we try to script something to happen, like a specific mission, we'll end up having those other lines intrude and say kind of off-tone things that aren't quite right.
Yeah, it's like system versus sort of intention, and then you're like...
Yeah.
Yeah, and we recorded a lot of dialogue was recorded specifically with our audio team. We recorded it, processed it, and made sure it was nice and clean. We have a really good person that we work with who edits all that dialogue, and they do a fantastic job. And so making them sound consistent is really kind of more of our job. And if they sound consistent, then they can be played in any context for the most part.
Yeah, and then it's up to us to figure out where that's supposed to be, and up to somebody implementing on the code side to make it actually function.
Yeah, right.
And so that's actually one thing that we've been looking at. Trying to maybe take another look at it sometime while we're continuing to support this game on in the future. We want to put some effort into seeing if we can do a better job of maybe playing. We have actually a lot of lines we haven't used yet that are just sitting there waiting for us to find the right context for them. And then there's other lines that are probably playing too often or in the wrong context. So we want to put some more work into that at some point. But that's why it's great to be working on a game that we continuously continue to support after it comes out, because we can look at something like that and not be quite satisfied with it and not have to give up. We can actually go in there and fix it.
It's nice for audio too, because a lot of times it's like you put out a game and you think, well, I put my best foot forward on this. So many things I couldn't quite get to, but now we can get to them. Like I just updated the kick sound or the stomping sound, and I just it's something that I wanted to do but haven't really had time for, and I just set aside a couple of days to just redo it, and then and now it's in the game and it's live right now, I think. So
yeah, I know that in 10.1 we also I think you or somebody or Kevin put some effort into changing the way that our container sounds.
Oh, right. So
there's an open.
There's actual open sound. Yeah, we didn't have that before, and it's something we always wanted, and we just were like, we need to bite the bullet and do the work to make sure it happens. And we all kind of tag teamed. I recorded opening my fridge and a bunch of boxes and various things I had, and we kind of combined all the sounds we recorded together, and then said, okay, let's take this set here, and this one can attach to this container, or these two can share this same sound, but this one needs its own unique sound. And
so yeah, so the containers all sound a little better now, and it's a subtle thing that if you're not looking for it, you might not realize why it sounds a little better. But yeah, that's what it was. Like it actually feels like you're opening a thing now instead of just sort of rummaging around a thing that's already open.
Yeah.
Right.
Good luck out there.
So we've only got about 4 minutes left. So if anybody's got a last-minute question, do your best to get it in quick, because we're not going to have a lot of opportunities.
Were there any of those questions that came in through?
Oh yeah. Well, actually, I might not even get to the questions that I came up with because there's so many questions coming from the audience. We do have. Null Error wants to know, what's the scariest sound you implemented or created? Yeah.
As in scary for the game or scary for me personally?
Yeah, have you ever scared yourself with a sound or freaked yourself out?
I got freaked out recording some ambient sounds in the middle of the night once. I had my microphones out in the middle of this field, right? And I had the cable strung maybe 50 feet out, and I was listening to it, and I'm just I kind of closing my eyes, zoning out, and I hear a grass rustle right next to and it sounds like it's right next to my ear, and I kind of was in the middle of the woods, in the Olympic Peninsula, and I just throw my headphones off and then turn on the light and try and shine something's there. But I realized that it's just a little piece of grass that's hitting the microphone.
Oh.
But it sounds so huge.
It's like some weird crazy ASMR thing, just touching your ear.
It really freaked me out, and I was like, okay, maybe I shouldn't have headphones on for a couple hours.
Fiery Sharkfin 84 wants to know where the sound of the Juggernaut charging and hitting the ground comes from. That big boom.
It's kind of a couple of layers of sound. We actually add, so there's a general impact sound, that impulse sound that we did, and it's just a really heavy sort of intense transient, like a boom, right? Mm-hmm. But we also put in one of the tails from one of our explosions, like the grenade explosion, and kind of tuck that in underneath it, a little quieter.
Oh, gotcha.
And so it kind of has that kind of bigger boom sound, like it's echoing throughout the world.
And it helps you kind of expect an area effect from it, because
he does
you're hearing an explosion. Yeah. Even you're not just hearing a thud, you're hearing something a little bigger than that.
And he also has a specific debris. Depending on what he hits, you might get rock chunks or something like that. And so you'll get a different debris sound coming off of whatever he hits as well. And we wanted it to sound big and almost like an explosion. It's not really realistic, right? If there was a big old guy that hits the ground, it might not necessarily sound like that. It might sound really lame and thuddy, but we want it to sound kind of dangerous, so you don't want to get hit by that. That's that difference between realism and what you want the game to actually inform you.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, I'm gonna stop since we're
getting close to the end here.
Yep.
All right. Well, so we are getting close to the end. Was one last question from something VISCID. They wanted to know about the Doppler effect. Is there a Doppler effect in the game? And if not, how challenging is it to implement something like that?
We don't have a runtime Doppler effect. We can make events that we know are going to fly by have a Doppler, like the crossbow, right? When that bolt gets close to your head,
you're right.
It does a little, right?
Gotcha,
and that's something we did as an asset pull. So we kind of made that asset with the Doppler effect. It's a really complicated process what Doppler effect actually is, how fast you're going, and when the pitch and frequencies kind of change. You can kind of fake it by like ramping up the pitch a little bit and pulling it down as it comes by. That's not really what Doppler effect is. It's the arrival of frequencies at different times based on their wavelength.
Yeah.
And a really simple explanation. So it would be really cool to be able to get that at runtime, because it would really like change the way that like car horns go by, and a lot of people do things like if you're something's flying past you, you'll play a specific event when it comes within a certain range, and just to play like a little sweetener that's kind of the Doppler effect, and so you can get those effects in other ways, but not really like a runtime effect. We don't have that.
And I imagine like if we were making something like a racing game where the entire game was made out of cars passing you, that would be the kind of game that would want that. Whereas like doing the sort of the little ways to fake it where it really matters in a game like ours is probably more worthwhile. You have to make trade-offs like that, right?
Right. Yeah.
Well, okay, we are out of time. Thank you, everyone, so much. Actually, first, let me switch over here to thank Brant for playing the game in the background. We did not talk to you very much at all.
It's okay.
Just how I like it.
Yep.
So really appreciate you playing the game.
They're gonna put me back in my isolated room after this. I'm only allowed out once a week.
But it's full of tacos, and so it's just fine.
I'm happy. Yeah.
I
will say real quick, thanks to everyone who stopped by, especially with our new time.
Yeah, we should point out for anybody who is watching this later, we're doing this live at a different time now. Mondays at 3 p.m. Pacific is our new time for the stream. So if you do like to watch us live, come see us then. Sorry to folks in Europe for whom that just got pushed into the midnight range, which makes it a little bit hard to come on here. We won't necessarily have this time forever. So if you have trouble coming, please, still come watch us on YouTube, the VODs that we post later on, and keep paying attention. I'm sure at some point in the future it'll change again. But extra special thanks to Alex for coming in here, giving us one of our most exciting interviews we've done in a long time. The audience was hopping with questions.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was fun to actually get to like dive into some of the stuff, and it's really fun for me to be able to explain it. And I'm happy that people are interested, and ask questions anytime, and we'll try to get them answered to you.
Alex will also entertain any questions you have in person at his place of residence, and will feed you if you stop by.
What in the world are you talking about?
I'm just trying to convince people to go stalk Alex.
So okay, well,
move into your house.
So so now that we've doxed Alex, let's get out of here. And so now, oh, by the way, look, that message up there. Susan Olenek is going to come and show us a new feature next week. Oh, that's going to be cool. I forgot to say that before.
Those of you who can make it, don't miss it.
It's going to be great.
This is big.
So do sound designers get an inherent sense of like how many seconds are going by? Because we're supposed to do this for about 15 seconds. Like, because it's hard to estimate time. Like I always imagine, reloading a gun. How long does that take? In a video game, often it just takes like a second and a half max.
Yeah.
But it feels like 6 seconds.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
I don't know that I might have an inherent sense of time because I used to play drums a lot.
Oh, that probably makes sense.
But it's not really in the sense of seconds. It's more like in keeping the same consistent time. So people always say, "Oh, you must be really on time all the time." I'm like, well, no, I just if I'm playing drums, I might be on time. But
thanks, everybody. We love you.